Now, earlier today, over and again at the Daily Mail, this was kind of a problem. They had this article, and it was covered in a lot of magazines and newspapers and websites and so forth. It wasn't just the Daily Mail, but basically said Google Earth releases satellite images of Iranian facilities which UN says may be used to develop nuclear weapons. Note the use of the word may. They may also be Santa's workshops. We don't really know, because these are satellite images, and there's a thing called a roof that is rather unrevealing about what goes on inside. They're saying it may be this, it could be that. That's not a justification to invade somebody. You know, the little old man who lives next door might have a meth lab in his kitchen. But until I have probable cause, we can't exactly kick down the door and start shooting up the place, although these days the cops do just that. And we have been down this same road before. First of all, this is not the United Nations saying that these buildings might be used for nuclear weapons. This is the IAEA basically regurgitating the secret annex from 2008 that was ignored in 2008 because there was no proof for any of it. And now the new head of the IAEA says, we don't need any proof. It's up to you to prove that we're wrong. We've already done that with regard to that Soviet scientist. So if you think back to the lies that led to the war with Iraq, we got the same treatment. We had all these photos in the magazines and on TV, these little blurry satellite photos, and we should have realized something was up because the satellites all shoot pictures in color, and Colin Powell was out there with these black and white blurry pictures and saying, we know this is a biological weapons facility. Turned out to be a bakery, by the way. It's the same thing all over again. Nobody is buying this IAEA report, so now they're going to start putting out all these pictures. We think this might be something bad. You think? Do you actually know, or is this a guess? We have it on good authority from a foreign intelligence service. Really, which one? We can't tell you that. And it goes on and on and on and on. They're BSing you is basically what it is. There's a word I'd like to use here, but I can't because we'll lose the FCC license on this transmitter. But you all need to learn to use this word. And you need to be ready to stand up and scream it out at anybody that says, we got to go and attack Iran because poor little Israel needs it. Israel's desperate for this war to start before the Americans leave Iraq, because once the American troops are out of Iraq, that road for a counterattack from Iran to Israel is wide open. You don't think the Iraqi people are going to get involved with this? Israel's desperate to start this war, maybe even desperate enough to nuke an American city and blame Iran for it, because they need to get this thing going before the Americans are out of Iraq, or they're going to have to fight their own defensive war. And they never do that. And the U.S. government is desperate for a war because they need a distraction from the coming collapse of Europe, and they need an excuse to basically stiff all these other countries on all the money that they've borrowed. We don't have to give you back your money, China. We're at war with you now. They're going to settle all their debts with a gunfight, like the old Wild West. And you know what's kind of amazing? I mean, the one that really, I think, showed the depths that they were willing to sink to were the mobile biological weapons laboratories, these trailer things painted green, and they had the tarpaulin thrown back, and there was all these pipes and tubes and strange-looking things, and they said, this is where they're making the anthrax they're going to put in your child's yummy burger. And it turned out that these were portable hydrogen generators, used a chemical reaction to produce hydrogen, because hydrogen is very difficult to store, as the hydrogen-powered vehicle designers are coming to understand, because it's a little tiny atom. It will actually seep through the metal of a tank and bleed off. You remember seeing the rockets, the NASA rockets, launching, and there was all this ice all over the outside? That was the hydrogen tank, because the hydrogen was literally seeping through the walls of the tanks, and when it hit the air, the moisture would freeze on it, and that's why you had these huge chunks of ice all over the outside of the rocket. That's why they were always having to top the tanks off right up to the moment of liftoff. So for military applications, for weather balloons or artillery weather balloons, whatever, they don't try and manufacture and store and transport the hydrogen. They create it chemically right there in a chemical reaction. And then they put it in the balloon goes up and says, yeah, you're going to have rain tonight. And that's what these trailers were, hydrogen generators. And the U.S. government knew that is what they were because they're made in Great Britain. This isn't something Iraq built for itself and didn't tell anybody. These are an item made and sold by a company in Great Britain for use around the world. And they knew that's what it was. What is insulting? What should be insulting to all of you? I mean, they're basically doing a repeat of the same lies they used to sell you a war in Iraq. And maybe you could be forgiven for giving them the benefit of the doubt the first time, but certainly not now. You know you were lied to before, and it's the same lies all over again. Fool me once, so forth and so on. And I want to make a point here that I hope you will take with you from the show today and share with your friends. Patriotism is not measured by gullibility. You are not a better citizen for accepting the lies the government tells you and acting as if it's the truth. You're merely stupid. And you should feel very insulted that the corporate media and these Cold War fossils running the propaganda campaign actually truly believe that you're dumb enough to fall for the same lies a second time. They have to think you're that stupid, or they wouldn't even be trying. They really think, they are convinced, they are so much smarter than you, that you are going to look at the exact same lies that led to war in Iraq, and you're going to believe it with Iran. And that's what they're going to do. It's amazing. Now, this IAEA report continues to be exposed as a huge fraud. As we mentioned before, all of the accusations against Iran are a regurgitation of the secret annex from 2008 that was discredited and refused for publication by the IAEA under Mohammed al-Baradei because there's no confirming evidence for any of it. It all came from this laptop of death that was handed to U.S. intelligence by a very dubious source. It seems to track back to Mossad, which loves to play these kind of dirty tricks. So there's no evidence to support any of it. That's why even the news today, they say, this may be a warhead assembly building. This might be. Maybe and might be is not a reason to go in and attack a country that hasn't attacked anybody since it was created. Iran became an Islamic Republic in 1979. Since that time, they have not invaded or attacked anybody. They defended themselves when Iraq attacked them, and Iraq was goaded into doing it by the United States of America, led to the Iran-Iraq War. But Iran has not initiated a conflict with any of its neighbors. It's not in their nature. Even before the Islamic Revolution, Iran has a long history, going back hundreds of years, of minding their own business. The same cannot be said for Israel or the United States of America, both of which actually do have nuclear weapons that nobody seems to want to talk about. Everyone's talking about nuclear disarmament and making the world safe from nuclear weapons. How about the United States? They got about 5,000 of them right now, and they're the only country that's actually used a nuclear weapon of mass destruction on the civilians of another country. How about we start taking their bombs away? How about we inspect Dimona and leave Iran alone? We'll be right back.
Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about this push for war in Iran. We have way too many of our world's leaders who see a major, global, bloody, radioactive war as their best solution to the problem of the 11th marble. And it's because of that 11th marble that we keep finding ourselves in these major wars time after time after time after time, because there is no 11th marble. It never existed. And nobody wants to admit it. They would rather kill off millions of people in other people's countries rather than admit it. So, anyway, the Russian scientist who was accused by the IAEA of being a nuclear weapons expert and of helping Iran to work on a nuclear weapon has basically gone public. And he's confirmed what we were reporting yesterday. His expertise is not nuclear physics. He is an explosives expert, and his specialty is the production of what are called nanodiamonds, tiny microscopic particles of diamond which have industrial application, high-tech polishing, micro bearings, all kinds of stuff like that. That's what this guy does, and that's all he's ever done. And he worked in Iran for a while. He's not there now. He worked in a while in Iran because Iran has a love with high technology. They're trying to move forward, unlike the United States, which seems to want to go back to the 12th century. So there's a big gaping hole already in the IAEA's report. The guy they said was a nuclear weapons scientist isn't a nuclear weapons scientist. And the research they were doing with high explosives was perfectly legitimate because that's what they used to make the nanodiamonds. And it all goes back to that secret annex from 2008, and all of that came off this rather amazingly convenient laptop of death. Let me ask you a question. If, let's say you've been married for a long time, and you're as happily married as I am, and all of a sudden a total stranger shows up and just hands you a piece of paper that says your spouse is fooling around on you. There's no photographs. There's nothing in the spouse's handwriting. There's no hotel receipts. There's nothing. It's just, we suspect. Would you believe that proffered accusation and file for divorce? Of course you wouldn't. You're not that stupid. You know, this could be somebody trying to steal you away from your spouse. There's all kinds of reasons for this. And we understand the U.S. and Israel want a war with Iran. And Iran won't give them an excuse, so they're just going to make one up. And the only thing that will stop them is if you keep saying, I don't believe a thing you say about Iran because you lied to us about Iraq. I don't believe Iran is a threat because of the three countries, Iran, Israel, and the United States of America. Of those three countries, Iran is the only one not invading other countries right now. So why are they supposed to be the villain here? We understand what's going on. We saw this in World War II. Adolf Hitler pulled it on the German people. They are coming to attack us. We must kill them first. Oh, all right, Führer, we'll go off and send our kids into Poland. That's how World War II got started. We know that's how they start these world wars. We know the cause of World War II. The global banker boycott against Germany because Germany wanted to break away from private central banking. Just like Qaddafi tried to do, go in and kill him. Just like Saddam Hussein tried to do, go in and kill him. Do you understand what's going on? Iran is one of the few remaining countries on earth that don't allow a private central bank issuing the public currency at interest. We're getting ready to invade it to make the world safe for compound interest. Isn't that a worthy cause for your child to be blown to bloody bits? To make the bankers happy? To force a banking system on the entire world that has brought this nation to the edge of ruin? Does that really sound like a good, noble purpose for which your children should die? I don't think so. Wouldn't get my kid. But go back and look at all the lies we were told about Iraq. And I put a whole bunch of them, I reprised them all to the front of whatreallyhappened.com today. And you can go in and look at all this stuff. Who was calling for war back then with Iraq and war with Iran? And where was all the lies and faked evidence? Where was it all originating from? And you'll find it's the same players all over again. They really think you're so stupid you won't see what's going on. So I'm going to get off this topic, but before I go, I need something from all of you listening to the show, and all of you who are listening to the podcast, and all of you who are talking about this show to your friends. I need something from you, really big. I need you to rediscover and reclaim your right to say no. That's what freedom of speech is all about. That's why we have that First Amendment. It's not about scantily clad girls dancing in the nightclubs. It's not about canvases on gallery walls with bovine excrement glued to them. The reason we have the right to freedom of speech is to give us the right to say no. There is no freedom without the freedom to say no. And there's never been a time in our nation's recent history where we more needed the American people to stand up and start screaming no. We are not going to go into another war in Iran. We're not going to throw our children's lives away to make the money junkies happy. We're not going to pay the costs of the massive mortgage fraud perpetrated by Wall Street any more than the Greek people should pay for the losses from Goldman Sachs cheating of their earlier government. Enough is enough. We're going to say no, and we need to be prepared to make it stick. Because when the slaves are no longer willing to toil in the fields, that's when the whips come out. That's what's going on there in all these Occupy protests, where the cops are coming in with the tear gas and the nightsticks and stuff. They're flogging the slaves back to their pens. That's what they're trying to do. I don't think it's going to work. It never has in the past. Things are about to get ugly, but I think in the long run, we're going to see the end of the United States and the Federal Reserve, and we're going to set the example for the rest of the world to get rid of these private central banks once and for all.